Welcome back to the Beyond the Balance Sheet podcast, where we go beyond investing to explore the people and the stories and the life experiences that help shape success. And I'm Aaron Carreño. I'm one of the co-hosts here of the podcast. And alongside me is Nathan Plumb of Wisconsin Capital Management. Nathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful as always, and it's great to be with you and with Patrick.
Yeah, we have another great guest here with Patrick and another great episode. Again, you can subscribe to previous episodes and you can follow those along wherever you get your podcasts. But today, we're with Patrick Farabaugh, the founder and publisher of Our Lives magazine. And for nearly 2 decades, Patrick has built a publication that celebrates people, fosters connections and relationships, and gives voice to stories that strengthen our communities across not only Madison, but all across Wisconsin. And Patrick, we're going to ask you a bunch. You've had quite the interesting professional journey and been a friend of mine for a long time. But Patrick, welcome to Beyond the Balance Sheet.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I love doing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you do, which is why we're excited to have you here today. So Patrick, Our Lives magazine is the name of the publication. But what is Our Lives magazine? Why'd you choose that name?
Yeah, so what it is it is an LGBT magazine for the people of Wisconsin. The name is almost a dog whistle. So, and what I mean by that is LGBT people will look at the magazine and they'll say, Our Lives, that's about us. And it's about humanizing narrative storytelling. But there's no pink triangle, there's no rainbow flags, there's no big word pride, except on the next issue, on the cover, to where the average person would pick it up and, like, Governor Evers is on this cover. They'll pick it up and get halfway through it, seeing Our Lives and think that it's for them as well. So there's an advocacy component to it and helping it both connect, inform, and educate LGBT people, but then also humanizing and continuing that education just to the wider population, building allies, hopefully, along the way.
Very good. Yeah, I didn't know that at all. Thank you for sharing that. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Patrick, tell us about just yourself. Where'd you grow up? And, what experiences shaped you to run a magazine at this point?
I grew up in Northwest Indiana, so just outside Gary, not the best place. Ran away from home as a teenager to New York City, got my start there, and built a career in media there. I got started at Entertainment Weekly. I was a teenager, 18 years old, working there. 19, I was one of the first early art directors of Out magazine. 21, creative director of Seattle magazine. 23, brought back to be a senior creative or senior designer at Condé Nast.
So I got to quickly ask before we get to Nate talking about publishing and storytelling. I mean, this is an interesting story. I mean, you ran away from home.
Yeah.
You worked for these, worldwide publications. How did you make that piece of leaving your household and then finding purpose in your work and figuring out how to take care of yourself?
Have you ever seen Forrest Gump? No, a lot of it, you're kind of drawn to what you need. And at the time, my childhood was in the 80s and then the early 90s, trying to figure out who I was. There was nobody that I could turn to in the part of the country that I was from. And where I found support was in media, TV shows, magazines, things like that. So I looked up the address of Entertainment Weekly and said, well, there's got to be people there that celebrate people who are different. I'm just going to show up there and hopefully work my way in and find the mentors and the role models that I need to be more than I thought the part of Indiana that I was from was capable of providing me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, that's it.
And I think as a teenager, you're still at an age where you don't know what you can't do. So you end up just doing it. Like looking back now, it's crazy how you did it all. I absolutely would not recommend it to anybody that I'm mentoring.
Well, Patrick, Nathan's got, such a great question about just, that publishing piece.
Yeah, I was just curious. So you started your own magazine. What was the inspiration to do that here in Madison? And can you just tell us about that journey?
Yeah. So again, media was a strong resource for me trying to figure out where I could draw support from. I never really felt rooted in New York. It's very challenging, especially once you do have that gay, homeless, runaway narrative attached to you, high-risk youth. So to find mentors and role models, like what I tell the kids that I end up mentoring now is oftentimes when chaos comes knocking, don't open the door. So the people that could have helped ground me in New York weren't opening the door because I was chaos at the time. Uh, Eventually, I decided that I needed to break the cycle of running away. I thought doing that would be coming back to the part of the world I initially left, reconciling who I was here. Madison checked all the boxes of what I thought I needed from a place. A lot of that being a small community that I could feel a part of, still the culture of a big city, the acceptance that you would get in a big city, and the inability to feel anonymous, which I think a lot of people with that high risk youth narrative are kind of invisible in those bigger cities. I wanted somewhere where I couldn't be invisible. Showed up in Madison and realized that a lot of the things I had leaned on for support didn't exist here yet. The two primary things that I leaned on in New York were a gay ice hockey league and media. Well, now that I know that I need those things, you don't know what you got until it's gone. Got here, those things weren't here. I was kind of at a crossroads. Do I double down and build these things, or do I now move yet again to somewhere that has them, knowing that I need them? Made the choice to double down, built a gay ice hockey league, which is probably a story for another time, and use the momentum of that to launch Our Lives as a media platform, hoping that it would be a magnet that would draw out into me and make visible those mentors and role models that I needed. Also hoping that other people probably needed the same thing.
No, that's incredible. Strike.
Yeah, and that's an entrepreneurial move, I mean, having had this experience working for these legacy companies,
Yeah.
what gave you the confidence then to take that leap? Or was it just, like you mentioned, that intuition and that no one's stopping me at this point, I'm going to do what I have to do to fill those voids?
That, but it's also amazing what desperation will make you do. Like getting here and realizing that I really did need these things. I started looking at what was in my toolbox. What did I have professional experience doing? And thankfully, I was trained by the best. I try to not let this be about ego or anything like that. But Condé Nast really is the top of the pyramid when it comes to lifestyle magazine and publishing, things like that. I had this skill set that really was unique, almost too unique. There's not necessarily a market in Madison that those skills translate to unless you do what I did and build it yourself.
Yeah, let's expand a little bit more on building the magazine, and Nathan, maybe some,
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit deeper as you start this off and where it's at today.
Yeah, I'm sure our audience probably has heard that the print media has been a tough place to be for the last, I don't know how long, decade or so. But this one has endured. A lot of these publishing type companies have transitioned now from like a more traditional business model. They transition to either a membership kind of fee type model, or they've like if you're part of a private club, and they've also transitioned to a nonprofit model. And often people use the IRS code called 5013C. That's essentially a tax code that makes it a nonprofit. And actually, Our Lives is transaction. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I think the only sustainable path for queer media, LGBT media, was a more traditional advertising driven path. Occasionally events, things that you would see media do. There was not a really sustainable way for nonprofit media to work for a marginalized regional community. Madison 365 enters into the scene probably around 2010, I would say, maybe 2012, somewhere in that window. And I really commend what Henry Sanders has done there. He's done a great job at proving or building a sustainable model for regional marginalized media as a digital media nonprofit. That's a mouthful. And as time has gone by, back in 2018, there was a newspaper in Milwaukee called the Wisconsin Gazette that folded around the midterms in 2018. That left Our Lives as the only LGBT media in the state. And I started getting a lot of outreach from Milwaukee and other urban areas of the state saying, is there any way to make room for us? We have nowhere else to go to tell our stories and have a platform. I used that as a catalyst to start to re-examine what my business model was. I could not sustain a print model statewide just from a distribution perspective, let alone staffing. I jokingly tell people that I'm the publisher and the paper boy. Like, I'm making all these executive level decisions. I'm also the one delivering them to the coffee shops and grocery stores, and that works when it has a small regional footprint. Doesn't work as well when it's a statewide footprint. So, leaned into Madison 365's model quite a bit. Really redid our website, ourliveswisconsin.com, to be a statewide portal for news, people, community, and culture. Those are the big buckets that content is built around.
Let's get into a little bit. Maybe this is new information for your readers and our viewers about this transition to a nonprofit. As a reader and somebody who's been familiar with your work for quite some time, what can we expect content wise that we're used to in the magazine? And how does that transpire into a more statewide nonprofit publication?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is going to remain the same. It's just kind of getting inverted. So historically, the main engine for content creation and for revenue has been the print magazine. And then the print magazine has fed the content that it's created to the website. The website's kind of acted as like this archive almost. Like new content really wasn't prioritized on the website because the revenue model was print. New content went to print and then it made its way to the website. So I built out the website so that within 2 clicks, you can region sort it or you can topic sort it. So for example, if you go there and you look at the content, you'll see these little orange arrows. If you click through, you can navigate and it'll sort content based on the big metro areas of the state. So like Madison, South Central, Milwaukee, Southeastern Wisconsin, Northeastern Wisconsin, and then just this big bucket for Western Wisconsin at the time. Or you could do it by topic. So like, let's say people of color is the one I like to use. I was a racial justice advocate before I came out, so I've been doing racial justice work for a long time. 1 click, you could sort it to Milwaukee. 1 more click, you could sort it to POC content in Milwaukee. And next thing you know it, with 2 clicks, the site is filtered to being a zine specifically for LGBT people of color in the Milwaukee area.
Wow, that's
So,
incredible.
yeah, based on any topic, there's probably about 20 different topics you can do that with. It's prioritizing a digital first media. And then as that builds, the website will start feeding that content to the print publications. The print publications will remain 6 a year, which is what it's been since the business launched. But the content will become much more driven by sort of like annuals. I've already tried fostering these databases, but lists that appear for each issue that each issue is branded around, they'll lean more into that. So like the current one that's on the table here, our food and dining list, we have a pride and color list for our July, August issue. We have an A&E list, arts and entertainment for September, a healthcare directory for November. So those will become much more, think of almost like phone book style annuals.
Yeah.
It's incredible how much media has changed just recently. It's been incredible. Wow.
Yeah, we're really excited for that. And I know it's going to take a little time for you to get going. But again, for everybody, we're talking with Patrick Farabaugh, the founder and publisher of Our Lives magazine. Let's get into, with the help of Nate here, just the impact you've had on the community. And, you've impacted me as a friend when I first moved to Madison and came out and being in the public media space. But what stories resonate with you the most? And is there one that you'd be willing to share with us today on how you made an impact on someone's life?
Yeah, a lot of the way that I think a lot of the founding of the magazine went back to trying to humanize our stories, trying to help people see us as just normal people, both within the community and then what I call prospective allies that may pick up the magazine and get halfway through it before they realize they're reading an LGBT magazine. The challenge there is I think a lot of that connection happens in vulnerability. Like a person's willingness to be vulnerable and share what life lessons they learned to navigate that vulnerability and get to a place of strength. Well, you have to take a lot of people who are in leadership roles that oftentimes getting them to share when they were vulnerable or what decisions they had to make in those windows of time are things that they have tried to bury for protecting themselves professionally. So I often have felt in the history of the magazine that my role has been more this hybrid role of editor and a therapist to try to get people to understand the impact and the power sharing that vulnerability with the audiences and help them feel safe enough to do it in that what often is done through narrative storytelling. When I started working at Entertainment Weekly, one of the things that I thought was kind of fascinating was one of the head designers there went to go be the creative director of People magazine. And Entertainment Weekly, this is in the mid 90s, graphically was considered the industry standard. They were doing really elaborate ornamental designs. And People magazine was almost the antithesis of that. It was just bare bones, real simple fonts, real, like, and I couldn't understand why this person would want to leave Entertainment Weekly to go to People. And then she explained that People was actually a harder job because the demographic audience of People was so much broader that they had to create something that would keep the tent big and not narrow the tent in the way that Entertainment Weekly did with the elaborate designs and things like that. So TV Guide, for the longest time, was the most read magazine in the country. It's why the logo was also as generic as possible, because the audience base was so large, they had to do something that everybody could identify or relate to and that wouldn't help eliminate or push out the audience. Hence, with Our Lives, why you see a really generic logo in the cover and a name that hopefully creates a big tent, rather than something that tries to narrow it down to a smaller slice of the pie.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially you're trying to break through different stereotypes. I think that's absolutely genius. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So Patrick, I have a question for you. So you mentioned before about this 501(c), the transition to a nonprofit.
Yep.
What are the things you have to think about when you build it? Do you need a board,
Yeah.
or like how do you go about such a thing?
Yeah, it is a pretty big reinvention. Currently, I am a sole proprietorship. So I establish a board, I establish an entirely different company, Our Lives Media. The board is attached to Our Lives Media. My company that owns and publishes Our Lives is Life in the Middle Publishing. That will go away. So right now, the board of Our Lives Media is doing a lot of the groundwork and infrastructure building around, like what is going to be the budget, what's going to be the products offered, right? The different sponsorships, what values be attached to those sponsorships, what's our footprint and our target demographics, what all the normal stuff that would go into a business plan. That's the stuff the nonprofit is working on right now. They're doing evaluation of the company right now, and towards the end of the year, the goal is that the nonprofit will then purchase Our Lives from my business. I will shut down my business and then transition into becoming an employee of the nonprofit. So currently my title is publisher, owner. At that stage, it'll probably become executive director and publisher.
Yep.
I am looking forward to it because for many years I've operated as a full-time staff of one. Uh, a nonprofit for me gives me more resources. It is much easier to engage help, uh, especially across the state. When it comes to fundraising, when it comes to editorial teams we're building out, uh, if people go to the website, ourliveswisconsin.com, you'll see a tab that has the word volunteer. If you drop down to volunteer with Our Lives, you'll see an entire list of ways that people can engage and volunteer to be a part of it. I'm really trying to transition it to a community-owned media.
So Patrick is starting a nonprofit. So obviously, it's a kind of a reflection of your personal life. So when you set up a company, you're kind of setting up another person, just to use an analogy. And with that person, you have to set up a checking account, a savings account, pay the normal bills like you do. But you also just save for retirement, right? So you always have to start usually an endowment or something like a foundation. And then you start investing stocks and bonds. And hopefully, that will grow, and so that can outlive the foundation and hopefully, for generations to come. So we do the same thing here. So when we have those 401ks, 403bs, 414as, like we do with all that stuff, essentially you're doing the same thing, and you have to do it for yourself and you have to do it for a nonprofit. So probably not when you're first starting a nonprofit, you may make sure you get your legs under you, but to make sure that you have a nonprofit that you really want to grow and be sustainable, I'd recommend talk to a finance person as well.
somebody who's interested in starting a mission-driven business, and
Mhm.
you hear about these stories more and more as time has progressed, what advice would you give them? If you look back at yourself and say, I was the young, ambitious Patrick that went out and did it, what would you tell that person?
Ooh, buckle up. First. But no, I think the biggest thing that I was unaware of at the time was the need was there, but not all the tools were there yet. So I had to let the need drive it, and I had to be really introspective about identifying what that need was. The more that I was able to identify what the need was, the more I was able to shape a mission, and I was able to draw a purpose from that mission. And as long as I was doing purpose-driven work, I felt like it was a matter of time before stuff would start to fall into place. Long before this was making this transition to being a nonprofit, I was kind of running it as a nonprofit. Uh, in media, there's a pretty long established ethical practice of they call it separating church and state. What I mean by that is separating editorial from the business side of things. That way your content isn't driven by business decisions. Your content's driven by genuinely what the needs are in the community. And that sales won't influence what content is. The magazine's always prioritized editorial, and then I've jokingly said that, especially with being a staff of one, uh, I don't go out and prospect. When you see advertisements in the magazine, those are people that are coming to me. And I've often told people, like, I don't even have the resources currently to pick the low-hanging fruit. Like, what you're seeing in the magazine is the fruit that's already fallen to the ground, and I'm just going around and picking that up. So I'm excited about the nonprofit because now I'm going to have a bunch of extra people to help me build capacity
Yeah.
so that I can go out, well, and start picking the low-hanging fruit and then start prospecting.
Yeah. Before we wrap, Patrick, what are you grateful for today, these days?
In. Uh, the biggest thing was I was terrified when I launched this. There was not, and to the best of my knowledge, there still isn't another model like it out there. So, and I launched it in 2007, which the timestamp on that was kind of at the peak of the Bush recession. People thought it was crazy launching a small, marginalized community, regional media, print media at the start of a recession. So, but the need was really essential and great for me and thankfully for other people. What I'm really grateful for is that people were willing to give me the chance to shoot my shot and hopefully buy into it and then get behind and support it. Media is a very challenging business to get off the ground because your money and your revenue comes from having an audience. Well, no media has an audience at the start of it. So I felt like for many years, a lot of people were essentially buying into me, knowing that I would had the vision to build something that could eventually become the return on the money they put in would come in years, just not right away, even though it felt like it needed to come right away for me at that time.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a credible thing for, especially for people who are feeling vulnerable, that there is a community for you. You do not go through this stuff alone. Most people approach me when they're feeling financially vulnerable. I'm happy to help you too, but there's a community for every time you feel that way. There is a community for you, and do not go alone. There are people that have gone through something similar to you have and can help you. So thank you.
Patrick, thank you very much for joining the podcast today. Great stories, and we are excited to see the nonprofit come to fruition.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome.
Right, guys, like,
For listening to the Beyond the Balance Sheet podcast. If you are inspired or a story today resonated with you and you'd like to be a guest on our show, then visit the website. Go to wiscap.com. Again, that's wiscap.com, and send us a message. At Wisconsin Capital Management, we believe your financial plan should support your life and not limit it. Until next time, thank you guys.